Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's class. We have the honor and privilege of listening and hearing from Stephen W. Gibson, the founder and CEO of the Academy. And today he's going to discuss with us sales. And so we're excited.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. I think it's really exciting to be able to visit with all 79 chapters in the world, chapters of alumni of the Academy. And we're really calling them learning centers, aren't we? Because they're going in that direction, especially as we have these slides, or excuse me, especially as we have these classes and these videos. Yeah, today we're going to talk about selling. Jeremy, as you talk with your students, both in Mexico and as you've taught in Brazil and in the Philippines, there seems to be a common reason that people feel they fail.
Yes.
What do they generally say?
They almost always say they didn't have enough capital.
Yeah, that's been my finding as well. But you know, as we get more involved with our graduates, we find that really capital isn't as important as two important elements that are necessary for business success.
Okay.
We know one is selling. Can you think of what the other one is?
Probably making a profit on the sell.
Absolutely right. And sometimes some of our newest launchers of businesses forget that selling and making a profit is really so critical. You know, one without the other just will not lead to long-term success. If you have sales, and I know a company that has $28 million in sales and they have very little profit, or if we have a company that has very little sales and lots of profit but not enough money to keep the business going, they're going to fail. Yep. So that's why I think you asking me to talk about selling is such an important subject to discuss today. You know, I remember a book that someone gave me once, and you know, here's the title, and I'm going to just give our viewers one part of the title first. How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success. That's a title that grabs everyone, but then we put the rest of the title, and it tends to be sometimes a little bit of a turnoff, but it shouldn't be. Here's the rest of the title. How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success through Selling. This is one of my most valued books that I often show to many other people, and that is How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success. Here's one copy, and then of course we have the slide that also shows that.
How do you always remember the name of the author of this book?
Well, you know, hey, that's a fun question. I always remember, as he explains it in the book, he always explains that his name is Frank Betcher. And so he says, when I introduce myself, I tell people that my name is Frank Betcher, like bet your life on making sales. So that's how I remember it. That's a great question. You know, I brought another book today, and as I'm looking for the page, I know you have a college degree, you have a graduate degree. Were you ever taught much about selling? Was there ever a class out of all the classes? You've probably taken 50 classes. Was there ever a class that taught you much about selling, Jeremy?
I had one class.
Okay. And out of 50, you only had one class?
And it was the class I took from Steve Gibson.
Ah, there's a name I recognize. Good.
I never had a single class dedicated on sales, and I can't remember, even in my graduate degree, them covering it in any of the statistics or any classes that I took in the business school.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, Jeremy. I guess most college students feel that they don't really need to learn how to sell. And
they think they're going to go hire somebody that will sell for them.
Yeah. But if they don't have profit, if they don't have revenue,
they can't hire
anybody. You know, another favorite book of mine that stresses in one line the importance of selling is explained on this phrase. In my experience, the author writes, selling is the most difficult single task associated with business success. So I'm thinking now, okay, he's telling us the most difficult task is one related to the most difficult task is selling. And so I think, okay, out of these 466 pages, there's going to be a lot about selling. But you know, Jeremy, I couldn't find a single lesson on selling. It's about all kinds of things. But you know, without sales, you just don't have a business. And we used to say, in the 13 years of working with salesmen, that the quickest way to have success in your business is to increase sales. Just increase sales with a healthy margin of profit. You think most of our students, most of our graduates understand that? But I guess, what do you think?
I've been surprised throughout the years to find that some people feel bad about making a profit when they sell something. Isn't that ironic?
Well, that is.
Have you ever seen that?
Well, we did a little bit in the Philippines, yeah. Which is strange, because why else would you be in business?
I don't know. But we are glad to know that the purpose of making a sell is to increase the perceived value of the product or service so that you can make a profit.
Absolutely. Well, as the slide says, the quickest way to have success in your business is increase sales with a healthy margin of profit. You know, another lesson that I was taught years ago by a man that I thought was quite old, and he was younger than I am now, but I hesitated to believe him when he taught me these few words, and I'm going to put them up. Nothing really happens in business until somebody sells something. Well, you know, his name was Ken, and I said, Ken, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, you find a location, that's something happening in business. You buy your products, that's happening in business. You sometimes have to buy a computer, a desk, you have to get a table, whatever. Things are happening. And he said, well, that's right, Steve, but nothing really happens in business until somebody sells something. Do you have any thoughts on that idea?
I think that it helps us understand that if you don't sell, then you can't start. Mm-hmm. You can't grow. You can't do anything. You can't hire people because you have no profits.
Yeah, that's true. Reminds me of a fellow by the name of Dennis Dalling. I met him maybe 10 years ago. He called me, a student at BYU, he called me, he said, Brother Gibson, I need your help. And I said, how can I help you, Dennis? What would you hope that would come from this conversation if we get together? He said, well, I've got a problem. I need $10,000 worth of sales every month. And I said, wow, that's a big number. It's a big number today. It was even a bigger number then. And I said, well, what have you done so far to start your business? And he said, that's why I need your help so much. I bought 5 desks. I've got 5 computers. I've got a system, hardware. I'm all ready to go, but I don't have any sales. And I said, well, who's manning the 5 desks? He said, well, nobody. That's part of my problem. I'm out of money. I don't have anybody to man the desk, and I need your help. What do you think I told him?
I have no idea.
Here's what I thought of telling him. Dennis, you're beyond help. Oh. But I didn't tell him that. But we worked together, and it was a tough road because he spent all his money, and nothing really had happened except he went through all of his money before he had any salesmen or any sales. Sad story, but a true story. You know, some people think that selling is all about talking. They don't sell anything unless they talk. And so a customer comes in and the salesman talks and talks and talks. Did you ever hear what some talk about, a cute little saying about listening as opposed to talking for a salesman? Does that ring any bells? Okay. Well, one of the things they say, if God wanted you to do all the talking, he would have given you 2 mouths and 1 ear. But a salesman should use his ears 3 times as much as he uses his mouth. And what's the best tool to find out what what the customer wants or needs?
You got to ask them.
You got to ask questions. And so one of the keys of successful selling is to ask the customer questions. But how do they know how to ask those questions? I think selling, you know, we often have this discussion. Is selling an art? Are you born with it? Or is it a science? Is it an art or a science? Or what do you think, Jeremy?
I think some individuals are naturally inclined and better at selling than others.
I agree.
I also know that you can help teach techniques and tools and acquire the skill to know how to sell better.
I agree. It's sort of like missionary work.
Yep.
Do you think some people have more skills to naturally be better missionaries, but if we just use just the ones with the great skills, what there might be 10,000 missionaries instead of 55, 60,000.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I believe that missionary work and selling can both be taught. And sometimes we have to, the best way to learn is to listen to other people as they either teach. That's why we have in the mission field senior and junior companions. And that's why in many of the chapters we have mentors, many of the chapters we have internship programs. I do feel that some things can be learned by reading, like these two books that we've referred to. I'm going to refer to another book, and I don't refer to these books because I think that all of our chapter members should go out and buy them. I just refer to them because there are books that they can borrow from a library, from a friend, from a mentor.
Online?
Online, yeah. Here's a great book that has meant a lot to me. This is by Tom Hopkins, and it says How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. So, I mean, here's a book just filled with ideas about selling. So let's go back to the original idea then, that nothing really happens in business until somebody sells something. So in the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have, I'd like to review just some steps in sales success.
Great. Let's do that.
Good. And I know you're probably familiar with these steps. They're a little bit different, especially the first one. If our business is a retail business, the customer comes into us. We've got to get them into the store, but the customer comes into us. And then we have other kinds of businesses that we call direct selling, where we have to go out and get the customer. But in either case, the first word that we use is called prospecting, going out and finding the customer. Or, if the customer comes into the store, prospecting by asking them questions about what they're looking for, what they're excited about purchasing, just a whole lot of questions. I remember, Jeremy, you told me that as you bought a car, that the salesman kind of prospected you and tried to find out what you needed.
Yep.
In your case, you already knew what you needed, but the salesman didn't, and so you had to communicate. So the salesman had to shut their mouth, and open their ears and ask you questions. So that's part of prospecting. You agree with that?
Totally.
Yeah, great. And then as we prospect together, we usually discover the need of the customer.
I think a lot of times, especially in Mexico, what I've seen, and it's like you said, individuals sit down and start talking.
You mean the salesman or the customer?
The salesman or the saleswoman.
All right.
The person making the sale.
All right.
And they want to prove why their product or service is the best or better than the competitors. And they'll talk and talk and talk, and they don't ask a single question. They don't try to figure out who the person is, where the person's from, how the business started, why they sell what they sell, or why they do what they do. So if I have a cleaning business and I'm going to somebody else's company, then I should get to know who they are and how they started their company and who's providing the services currently or how satisfied they are with that service.
Absolutely.
And start trying to discover why that person has accepted a time with me.
Great.
If the owner of that company has let me in their door, then they have a need, and I need to discover what that is.
Very good. And discovering the need, there's only one way to do it. You've mentioned it again. The salesperson has to ask questions of the potential customer, and as they discuss and ask questions, they're really doing what we call qualifying the customer. They're finding out if the customer really does have a need, and specifically what the need is, and the salesperson is also finding out if their product meets the needs of the customer. Do you agree with that?
Yes, completely.
Yeah, that's great. Well, your job, the job of our alumni, soon to be 5,000, the job of our alumni is to get the customer talking about their needs. Do you agree with that?
Completely.
Yeah, great. Thank you. You're so easy.
You're a good salesman.
No, I don't know about that. I need you to do more talking. No, you're doing fine. Well, there are certainly 3 more steps to the selling process, and let's just go through those. Step number 1 is overcome objections.
Step number 4.
Step number 4.
Step
Thank
number
you,
4.
thank you. You know, as an entrepreneur, we're not very good at counting.
Right.
You know, as a photographer, when I was a photographer, you'd only count to 3. 1, 2, 3. So thank you for helping me out. Number 4 is overcoming objections. Do we really want to get the objections from the customer? I mean, do we want the customer to tell us our price is too high? Do we want our customer to tell us they were really coming in looking for a dress that was blue, not green? Do we really want those objections from our potential customers, Jeremy?
Of course.
Why? Why do you want objections?
In my opinion, when you get objections, the customer or the client or the person you're trying to sell to is able to express their needs more. And as they do that and they come up with issues or these objections, you have the ability to demonstrate why your product or service may be better than what they're currently having. If you only have green dresses and they want a blue dress and you can't make a blue dress, then you know that you're done.
That's right.
And it's okay to shake hands and walk away.
I agree with that. There's no need beating the customer up. That's another thing I see. You know, the more experienced salesperson talks less and pushes a little bit less, but does less talking and more asking of questions. That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. Well, there's another whole part of the sales process that is the natural next step. As we overcome objections, the next step is to close the sale. And someday, in a video in the future, we're going to talk about 6 closing techniques. Most of our alumni have heard those. Let me mention one. I'm not going to teach it today, but let me mention one. You mention one. I'll mention one. See if we can come up with 4 or 5 different closing techniques. But again, in a future video, as we talk with our 79 chapters, we'll talk about these 6. We'll do some more role playing. We'll explain them. But I think today we're setting the basic foundation of selling. So the first closing technique I'm going to just mention, that's all we're going to do, is the puppy dog close. That's one of the favorites.
That was my one I was going to say.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Have you got another one?
There's the pending
event?
Pending event close.
Yeah, that's great. Pending event. We'll talk about that next time when we do a video on closing the sale. Here's another one, the alternate choice close.
That's the next one I was going to say.
All right.
You've got the third-party close.
Absolutely.
So
third-party close. That we've named 4 so far.
Yep.
You better have another one in mind because I'll probably say the one he's got in mind.
I'm going to say the sharp angle close.
Okay, great. That's number 5, the sharp angle close. And the 5th closing technique.
Sixth.
6th, thank you. There we go again. The 6th closing technique is called the fill, felt, found close. The fill, felt, found close, which is a powerful one. Well, Jeremy, we've talked about closing the sale. What's the final thing we do?
You write up the order.
Absolutely.
Get
And get the what?
Get the money.
Get the money, honey. All right, yes. We want to get the money. We need to get the money. You know, we really don't have a sale until the money is collected. Once we write up the order, we collect the money, and sometimes we can collect the money in advance even before we deliver the product.
That's right.
I know one of the companies that I spent some time and money with was called 1-800-CONTACTS. And when they take the order for the contacts, they get a credit card right then, write up the order, get a credit card, and get the money before they ever ship the product. And of course, they're filled with integrity because they must fulfill the order. They must ship the product. They've taken the money. Okay, so finally, let's go to the 6th one, which is write up the order, which I already discussed. Collect the money in advance, if possible. Well, 2 final thoughts on selling. Do you have any other final thoughts on selling before I mention something?
For me, if we could compare sales to the body, sales is your heart.
Okay.
Because if you don't have sales pumping like your heart pumps, then you have nothing else.
Okay.
So you have to have sales.
All right. And I like that analogy. We're talking about the anatomy of the body. The heart, what does the heart pump in the business environment?
The heart pumps cash.
Absolutely.
So your heart is your sales is your heart, the blood is your cash, and your veins are your systems.
Absolutely, great. And your arteries and veins of your system's great. Well, my two final thoughts on sales for our customers, for our chapters that we're talking with, is to deliver on your promises.
I think too many people fail right there.
Do you think our alumni fail in that area?
No,
No,
they
all
don't.
right. I hope not. All right. And the final,
Which is good for them.
what?
It's good that our alumni fulfill their commitments because their competitors will not. And so, as one of the famous professors at Harvard says, the key to business is customer service.
All right.
And if you can sell the product and if you can deliver on what you've promised, you're already 9 times faster than your competitors.
Yeah, you're ahead of 90% of your competitors. That's true. That's great. And John Jesperson last month taught us about customer service. Finally, a good salesperson, and a lot of people forget this, is a good salesperson when the customer has just got the product, they're excited about it, all promises have been kept, the money has been received. A good salesperson asks for referrals. Agree with that?
Totally, just like missionary work.
Absolutely, just like missionary work. Well, in the future, at some other time, we'll teach the six powerful closing techniques that we talked about. But until that time, Jeremy, I would say to our nearly 5,000 graduates now, happy selling. Be successful.
Happy selling. We love you.
All right, we do. How do you say we love you in Spanish?
Les amamos.
Yeah, this is the way we say it in the Philippines. We love you. All right, thank you very much.
Goodbye, Africa.
Yes.
Goodbye, Philippines. Goodbye, Mexico.
Indonesia. Soon to be Brazil.
Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Sell, sell, sell.
BYE.